Welcome to this Memorial Day meeting of Democrats of Greater Tucson. This is the day when we honor the men and women who died while serving in the U.S. military. And I'd like to read a short poem written in 1915 as a memorial to those who died in a battle in World War I. I'm sure you'll recognize it. In Flanders fields, the poppies blow. Between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place. And in the sky, the larks, still bravely singing, fly, scarce heard among the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago, we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders field. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you, from failing hands, we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. And if you break with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders field. Let's get to some announcements. We have Kirsten Engel, candidate for Congress, on our program. We're all thrilled. Kirsten, give us a wave and say hello.
Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here today.
Awesome. Kathy Ramage-White, tell us about membership. I ran into some people and they say, oh, how do you join DGT?
Join the DGT is easy. I heard Kirsten say that she let her membership lapse and she put a little sticky on her for a reminder for her to join up again. And you know, it's only $20, and all you have to do is go to the dgt.org, and right there it'll say join now, and you click on join now, and it's only $20. It's such a deal. Speaking of announcements, last week we announced our DGT drinking democratically. I only had one beer, I promise. So I wasn't drinking democratically so much that I forgot what day it was on. But I do remember it was wonderful. So if you haven't yet joined DGT, join today. It's easy. It's reasonably priced, and I think you'll really like being with the in crowd right here. So Larry, I'll send it right back to you.
All right, fabulous. Thank you so much, Kathy. I put the link in the chat if you'd like to join. All you need to do is click on it and it takes you to Act Blue, and you can join in literally seconds. And now I'd like to get an announcement from Sandy Binion, who is our program director.
In the future here, next week, we have Andres Portilla, who is a candidate for city council in Ward 6. The primary is in August, the election for city council in November. Three wards are up for election. And following him is Paul Cunningham, who is not up for re-election because Ward 2 doesn't have an election this year. And following that, we have Marco Lopez, who is the first Democrat to announce his candidacy for governor of Arizona. So lots to look forward to.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Sandy. That's fabulous. Lucy, I see you have your hand up. Go ahead and tell us what's on your mind.
I have two announcements, very quick. This Thursday at 4:30, the Education Potential Council for the Arizona Democratic Party is having a meeting. And if you would like to join us and hear what's going on, email me and I'll send you the link. In addition, mark your calendars for Saturday, June 12th. The Tanque Verde Dems will be hosting our LD9 and our LD10 legislators. All 6 of them will be joining us, and that's at 10 o'clock. And the link will be up on our website, tanqueverdedems.org, in the next day or so. Thank you.
Thank you. Fantastic. I want to go see all 6 of our Democratic representatives. That's fabulous. So our speaker today is Democrat Kirsten Engel, who was just elected to the Arizona State Senate in 2020. Now she wants to take the fight to Washington to advocate, among other things, for the For the People Act, or H.R. 1. This bill would make Election Day a federal holiday, provide additional protections for military and disabled voters, and shine a light on all the dark money spending in our elections. Kirsten is running for Congress in Tucson's Congressional District 2, after incumbent Congresswoman Ann Kirkpatrick said she would not seek another term. In the state legislature, Kirsten has worked to restore funding to public schools, protect Arizona's natural resources, and make our communities safer by reforming the state's criminal justice system. Today, she is a University of Arizona law professor specializing in environmental and administrative law. And with that, Kirsten, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Larry, for that introduction, and hello to all of you, and happy Memorial Day. Certainly very significant to have this on Memorial Day when we're both relaxing and spending time with our families and thinking about our values, as well as honoring the folks that served in our military and lost their lives. So I well remember my very first DGT. It was actually on Martin Luther King Day in 2016. So it's been nice to be back several times, and now really fairly early on in this congressional race to have an opportunity to talk to all of you. So what I thought I would do is tell you why I'm running, give you maybe a little bit more of a deeper background on my experience, talk about some of the priorities I'd like to pursue in Congress, and leave you with some concluding thoughts about how important this race is, and then open it up for questions. So I hope we will have time for a good, vigorous Q&A session. So I'm running to bring my experience as an attorney, as a legislator, as an educator to Congress to fight for Southern Arizona values, whether it's protecting our environment, building an economy that works for literally everyone, ensuring access to affordable and quality health care, or protecting abortion rights. I am ready for the fight. Like so many Arizonans, I've had to balance work and parenting my entire career here in Arizona. And the pandemic has made this balance much more challenging for everyone. I know how women have taken on the brunt of the pandemic, both at home and in lost jobs in the workplace. We need to do more for working families, especially parents. And I'm ready to do that work to help families not just recover, but thrive in a post-pandemic Arizona. As we emerge from this pandemic, it's more important than ever that we invest in the fundamentals of what will be a strong economy of the future. And this means investing in both the hard infrastructure, roads and bridges, but also the social infrastructure that will create sustainable and good paying jobs and a skilled workforce, and fill those jobs with persons who have been traditionally left out of our workforce. And we need to do it at the same time we protect our natural resources and we combat the problem of climate change. We need an economy that works for everyone. We need a society where my daughter's generation is going to thrive, and where working families can succeed, and where our parents will be cared for. I would be very proud to carry on the tradition of strong leaders like Gabby Giffords and Ann Kirkpatrick, and use my experience to fight for Southern Arizona families and small businesses. So let me step back for a minute and give a little bit more background on me before I talk about what my priorities will be in Congress. All of you, some of you know of me as a state legislator. I first ran for the Arizona House in 2016. I was reelected in 2018 and then ran for a David Bradley seat here in District 10 in 2020. During this time, I've also been a law professor at the U of A, teaching environmental law, administrative law, and teaching mostly law students, but more recently, I've been exposing undergraduate students to our legislative process. I've had less of an opportunity to talk about some of my experiences before going into the legislature, and I'd like to mention some of them because I think they do fill out kind of the whole picture of me. I actually started my career after law school at the United States Environmental Protection Agency. I worked in their Office of General Counsel on Superfund policy, the cleaning up of toxic waste sites, and very soon learned about some of the ways in which the laws are structured so that they do not necessarily carry out what we would understand as environmental justice, the ways in which poor and minority communities are often disproportionately burdened with environmental harms. I left there to work for Sierra Club Legal Defense Fund, and there I worked actually mostly holding EPA accountable, filing lawsuits against EPA to make sure that they were actually following the law. I did go into academia at that point, but one of my most significant experiences prior to coming to Arizona was heading up the Environmental Protection Division of the Massachusetts Attorney General's Office. And it's there that I worked on wetlands law. I worked at brownfields revitalization. I also was part of a historic settlement with the lead paint manufacturers that culminated in warning labels on all paint that was sold in the state of Massachusetts. And I worked on an enforcement case against a groundwater polluter and achieved a significant settlement in that case. So then I came to Arizona, where I've been at the law school, teaching students, getting them jobs, building up the law school's certificate program, which is really something that students can use to get a job. And in the state legislature, I have been on, just to tell you what my committees have been, I've been the ranking member of the Environment Committee, the ranking member of the Judiciary Committee, and also served on the Finance Committee and both the Ethics Committee in both the House and the Senate. I've worked across the aisle on criminal justice reform, on water issues, on environmental issues, and on education issues. And I believe I have done so without compromising my values and keeping in touch with my constituents. And so I want to thank all of you, those of you who have sat through our LD10 monthly town halls and read my newsletters. And I'd like to mention just a few of what I consider to be successes of my legislative career. I think we're finally seeing the enactment of bills that I worked on in a very small bipartisan group, negotiating these criminal justice reform bills. When I started back in, I guess it was about 2017 and 2018, where we pulled together Democrats and Republicans for study sessions that I organized to go over this legislation and to negotiate the fine points. And actually several of those bills have actually passed and been enacted into law this year. Treatment of undesignated felonies as misdemeanors during probation. So probationers actually have a shot at completing their probation, getting a job, getting housing, reforming our competitive offender sentencing, and collecting data on criminal justice reform. A weakened bill because it's a result of compromise, but nevertheless, something of a product of a bill that I sat down and worked on with Joel Feinman in a downtown coffee shop before I even went into the legislature. During the off time, especially this past year, I've gotten very involved in housing issues, especially on prevention of evictions. And we have been successful in eliminating some of the burdensome requirements for getting rental assistance and in making sure that we have a moratorium in place. Right now, even though the Republican budget is an absolute mess and it is not a budget I could ever support with the Ducey flat tax in it, this budget amazingly actually has some bills that I have sponsored in the budget. It has an increase in the Group B weights for special education. This will increase the funding for students. That was one of my bills this year. It also has money for funding the general stream adjudication for determining water rights and making sure that we do not have unregulated pumping of our rivers in the guise of groundwater pumping. The other sort of category of successes I would point to are not necessarily enacting legislation, because as you know, it's a very partisan legislature in which I have been a member of the minority party. So I have to count as success the really bad bills that we have killed up there and the bad bills that we have made better. And I'd say one of the successes I would point to that I was the lead on this year was the bill in which the legislature was trying to preempt the Corporation Commission's clean energy rules. So we fought against that and got a couple Republicans on our side, which enabled us to kill that legislation. So I'd like to say just a few things about, what do I see as my priorities? What am I going to work on in Congress? And I would say there's 4 top priorities. Obviously, I've worked on a lot of issues. I'm interested in a lot of things. And so there'll be many more issues that I would like to fight for Arizona on. But the ones I would say would be the very top of the list is, first of all, building an economy that works for everyone through investments in hard and social infrastructure. And I think that this will enable us to expand our economy, safeguard our natural resources, fight climate change, and put people to work. And I would say that investment in hard infrastructure is important, but just as important is how we do that in a manner that is environmentally sustainable, but also those social infrastructure supports. So what do I mean by hard and social infrastructure? Well, some of the top priorities in hard infrastructure are things that you hear about all the time, roads and bridges and digital broadband. I mean, one of the things that we have found as a result of COVID is how difficult it has been for many of our kids and many of our families to be able to participate in our economy because they don't have broadband service. So that has to be one of the top things. We need water infrastructure. We need water infrastructure that will enable us to reuse our water, conserve our water, store our water. We need EV charging stations to make this transition to electric vehicles and other things that we can electrify and therefore rely on the power of the sun rather than fossil fuels. We need infrastructure improvements that will reduce wildfire hazards in our state. And this is something very much within the federal government's authority and one that will save us untold amounts of money as well as saving lives. We need to do this. We have to invest in the social infrastructure as well, or else none of these hard infrastructure investments are going to go anywhere. And by social infrastructure, I'm talking about things like childcare supports, which will enable mostly parents, families to be able to go back to work, and critically, women to go back to work by having those childcare supports, and college and career readiness programs. So I've been very proud to really champion JTED programs in our high schools. And again, this is actually something that is showing up in our Republican budget, believe it or not. Finally, 4 years of funding for JTED programs, something I've been pounding on for years, and career and college readiness programs. We need to make those workforce developments. And I think we can work with our unions to do that. They've really been at the front edge of apprenticeship type programs and really making those connections between workforce training and the jobs that are available. So that's number one. Number two, protecting our environment and ensuring that we have a water future here in Arizona, despite the fact we are now in a 21-year drought. We have a spectacular environment. People come from all over the world to enjoy Southern Arizona. We have a $20 billion tourism industry, and much of that is because people are coming to enjoy Arizona's beautiful outdoors. With our almost year-round sunshine, we really should be the solar capital of the world. Janet Napolitano said it right. We should be the Persian Gulf of solar. And we also have an opportunity to create jobs at the same time we protect our environment and we battle climate change. So also as part of this, we need to be dealing with our water future. It's been front page headlines over the past couple weeks about how we are looking at going into a tier 1 and tier 2 shortage on the Colorado River. And this is very, very serious business. And there are many things that we could do to safeguard our water, and we just need to get to it. Something like the Colorado River is very much dominated by the federal government, the Bureau of Reclamation, and that is something where I can see having an important role in terms of helping Southern Arizona, having been through the drought contingency plan, as well as working on the Natural Resources, Energy, and Water Committee of the state legislature for all the years I have been in the legislature. Third, I would say access to affordable quality healthcare. That continues to be a top priority. Healthcare is a right, it's not a privilege. And unfortunately, too many people still don't have access to affordable healthcare. Too many people are forced to make a trade-off between food and shelter and healthcare, and that just is not right. There are many things that we can do to make healthcare available and affordable. Finally, I would put in my top priorities reproductive healthcare. We have seen really extreme positions being pushed at the Arizona legislature this past session. There's really been attacks. And we are creating law here in the state that will end up before the Supreme Court, and inevitably will be issues that Congress will need to deal with. We need protections for reproductive health care at the federal level. And I see that as very important as we see many states chipping away at this and having some success recently, as they have had in Arizona. I am a proud pro-choice candidate, and I'll be fighting to protect that choice at the federal level. So in conclusion, this will be one of the most competitive races in the country. It is key to maintaining our Democratic majority in the US House of Representatives in 2022. This district has always been competitive. Just 4 years ago, we have to remember it was held by a Republican. And we know this race is going to be a top priority for the Republicans again as they try to take back the House and undo the progress that we have made and impede the plans of President Biden in trying to rebuild our country. So we need to ensure that we are well placed to be successful in November 2022 so that we keep this district blue and that we continue to fight for the needs of Southern Arizonans. And I would be very proud to carry on the tradition of Gabby Giffords and Ann Kirkpatrick, who won tough races in this state and in this district and stood up for Southern Arizona values. So with that, I would like to announce we are having a formal kickoff of my campaign on June 10th at 6 p.m. at Hotel Congress. You may have seen that in emails that we've been sending out, as well as on my Facebook page and my web page, which is www.engelforarizona.com. And that's ENGELFOR, Arizona.com. But I would invite all of you to come to our kickoff. I'm hoping it's going to be a night with music. Love to talk to you in even more detail about my plans. So please, I hope you mark that on your calendar. So with that, I will give it over to questions. Thank you.
Thanks so much. We are absolutely thrilled you've been in the state legislature. You've just done magnificent work. And today, we have a question from Lucy Messing. Lucy, go right ahead, please.
Thank you. As you know, Kirsten, I was up at the Capitol last week going through that mess. And we will be back, Red for Ed will be back when you resume. My question is, shouldn't we be motivating as many people as possible to get up there and watch the shenanigans? Because I really believe they act differently when they are being watched by actual people. So what do you think about packing the gallery again?
Lucy, I think that is a great idea, and I am ready to fight to get you admission to the state Senate. As you know, teachers came up just last week, and yourself, I know you stayed overnight. Many other teachers did as well. Us Democrats, we submitted to Senate leadership our request to have teachers as guests in the gallery. And we were met that day, even though we had put the request in a timely basis, with an absolute prohibition. And I think that this is just clear discrimination. It's clearly just trying to shut down and exclude the teachers because they know they really don't want the teachers to see how the sausage is being made and what they're doing, especially some of these bills where they're trying to muzzle teachers in the classroom. Very unfair. We've had entire marching band in our gallery, and yet we cannot have teachers from the state of Arizona in the gallery. So come on up. We'll fight for you again. Hopefully we'll be successful. We'll see where it goes.
All right, Craig Markin has got his hand up. Craig, please go ahead.
Yeah, hello. With solar and wind energy being intermittent, what's your position on nuclear energy as a non-carbon dioxide emitting system?
Well, I do support the Corporation Commission's Clean Energy Standard, which unfortunately has been watered down, and you've probably been watching the back and forth on that. It's now 100% clean energy by 2070. 2070, that's a little bit hard. That doesn't sit well with me. I think we can do a heck of a lot better with it, especially since our utilities supported the earlier rules that would have achieved that in 2050. But as you know, that clean energy standard does incorporate nuclear energy. Nuclear energy is obviously carbon-free. And we do have the Palo Verde plant here in Arizona. I don't see a reason to shut it down. If we've got working and safe nuclear power, but I don't really see investing in new nuclear power. The price of solar and wind is dropping so dramatically, as is the price and development of battery storage, that it seems like this is much more economical. And what we have seen in other states is just the enormous costs to the ratepayers in paying off as they decommission nuclear power plants that have turned out to be too expensive. So investing in new nuclear plants, very expensive, not cheaper than coal and wind. I mean, not coal, solar and wind. Very, very long time frame to actually license one of these plants. So what I would like to see is investments in solar and wind, and really significant investments in battery storage and other ways of storing energy, hydro storage too, so that we can make sure that it is a 24-hour source of energy and not just when the sun shines or the wind blows. But there's a lot of developments that are being made on that.
Thank you.
Good question.
All right, we've got a question from Susie Anderson, a member of our board. Susie, go right ahead.
Hi, Kirsten, thank you so much for being here. There has been some newspaper articles about the pipeline for water coming from the northern Mississippi, Missouri. Will the money that is in the budget that you talked about, it doesn't seem quite as unfeasible as you had considered before, but this possible pipeline, will they look at the sources not just from the northern Mississippi, but also the southern Mississippi?
I frankly haven't heard anything about the southern Mississippi. I think that the proposal that they've been discussing, there's been two actions. One, we passed on party, well, not quite on party lines. There were a few Democrats that supported it. A memorial, basically a letter to our congressional delegations supporting this idea of a 1,000-mile pipeline that would basically cross northern part of the United States and join up with the Colorado River to siphon off floodwaters from the Mississippi into the Colorado River. I haven't heard anything about a southern pipeline. I am not in favor of this. I think we need to clean up our own house first before we start looking for many billions of dollars of investments in a 1,000-mile pipeline project for floodwaters that we don't have a legal right to, and other states may want, states that are between us and the Mississippi. There are so many things that we could be doing here in Arizona. And the sad thing about the Arizona legislature is that they've just had their head in the sand and they haven't heard the bills to look at, how many acres are we farming? How are we farming? What are we using to preserve our water? What things could we be doing better in our cities? How could we better be storing our water? How could we be better in reusing our wastewater? There are so many things that we could do before that. What the budget has is it has a $200 million budget in it. And they slipped in this language, which was never debated. It didn't go through any kind of real hearing process to fund the importation of out-of-state water. And it seems like they are referring to this. The funding would actually be distributed by a board that would be controlled by the Senate President and the Speaker of the House, making it clearly a partisan board. So at this point, I don't think that this is well thought out, and it's premature. There's many more things that we should be working on before we go to that process. Is my view.
We have a question from Barbara Warren, one of our members. Go ahead, Barbara.
Kirsten, right in the beginning of your presentation, you talked about killing a clean energy rule. Why was it bad? Could you explain that better?
Yes, sorry. Thank you, Barbara. This was a bill that was introduced to actually take away the authority of the Corporation Commission to enact those clean energy rules. So Arizona has this, as I said, this sort of watered down now clean energy rule of 100% clean energy sources by our regulated utilities by 2070. And what the Arizona legislature was trying to do is really exploit some language in a Supreme Court decision that came out a year ago, an Arizona Supreme Court decision that talked about kind of an overlap between the legislature's authority and the Corporation Commission's authority, and indicated that the legislature had power over when it acted in the space of regulating for health and safety. A bit of a controversial interpretation of that Supreme Court case, but in any case, here you have a Corporation Commission, an independent, 5-member board elected by the public that has spent 4 years working on revising and strengthening our clean energy rules here in Arizona. And the legislature, with sort of a flick of the pen, without any kind of real understanding or expertise in the area of energy, was simply trying to get rid of those rules and the authority of the Corporation Commission to set clean energy policy. So that seemed very badly advised, and the legislature didn't even have a plan to replace it with anything until the very end when we pointed that out. And what they wanted to replace it with was actually the Corporation Commission's old rules, and make them, they would then be written in stone. So this was a very bad idea. I think we have to support good members being elected to that Corporation Commission. Very important commission in the state of Arizona. It should not be something that's under the thumb of the state legislature.
Thank you for that clarification. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for that.
All right, now we turn to Robert Wallen, who has a question. Go ahead, Robert.
My question for today, what would you do about how to really stand up to and confront this crisis in our politics and in our country? And this Republicans are playing dirty and they're playing nasty, and just reaching across the aisle and being nicey nice, I think, is how we've been getting our asses kicked.
You know, you do have to just sort of stand up and just say it like it is. I mean, I have been in the state Senate, and it is the Senate Republicans that are pushing, fraud it. And it is truly mind-boggling. And it's also very frustrating to the Democratic senators when the media refers to the Arizona State Senate does this and that. And it's like, hell no, that's not us. That is the Senate Republicans. So let's make sure that the responsibility is correctly assigned first and foremost. Let's be very clear about what the implications are of what they are trying to do. How they're trying to undercut our democracy and our voting and perpetuate this myth of the steal. I just see you have to be very, very matter of fact about that, very clear about that, and really, really unpack it for the average person out there. I do think reaching across the aisle is important and working on the things that you can actually work on. And trying to compartmentalize to some extent the work, and not allowing some of the really toxic pieces on things like voting rights completely eliminate any ability to talk to somebody about water issues. So I don't think reaching across the aisles is going to make it better on something like voting rights. I think something like that, you have to just be as strong and as clear as possible about what is actually going on. But you do have to be able to shift gears and say, okay, right now we're talking about water rights, and we've got a problem here in Arizona. And here's some of the choices. What's your response? So I'm not seeing that cross the aisle will necessarily help us on something like the recount that's going on in Maricopa County right now. But I do think it'll help on the areas where you can find, hopefully, some common ground.
Got a question from Craig Markin. Craig, please go ahead. There we go.
As a follow-up to my previous question, with battery technology today, it seems to be looking toward lithium batteries. And I'm concerned about having enough lithium to just power the cars that are in this country, much less the world. And I'm also concerned about the environmental effects of mining that lithium in the first place. Do you have any comments on that?
Well, I think that is an important concern. I've been gratified to see that actually there's really been some work done. I know the University of Arizona is now actually investing in a sort of school of mines. I know part of that effort has been looking at remining old sites that were abandoned and have not really been fully mined using modern technology. So I think I would really like to better understand and explore what our options are for the mining industry in terms of doing that smarter, and so that we're not necessarily, ripping up and opening new mines when we could be doing a better job with our old mines. But yes, you're pointing out, these new technologies that we're relying on, they do work on minerals. And that's why, the mining industry is one that we really need to be smart about. And we need to make sure that wherever we're doing it, we're respecting human rights, we're respecting environmental standards, and we're looking carefully at the trade-offs between mining and the natural resource values in that location.
We have a question from Barbara Madison. Go ahead, Barbara.
My question's short. Will the lap tax make it into the budget?
I don't think so. I don't think so. Republicans are falling off of that flat tax left and right. I'd say we should rack this up as a Democratic win. It's not over till it's over. You know, they might be able to find something to, twist some of those no vote Republicans. Quite a few Republicans in the House have fallen off, and one, if not two, are off in the Senate. So I think really what we have to be concerned with next is, what is going to come next? If we're successful in getting rid of this flat tax, which is very extreme and very inequitable, what is the next proposal going to look like? How do we analyze that? Maybe I'm kind of cautiously optimistic that maybe we're going to beat this. Ducey is really, he's putting on the gloves by vetoing, as you may have seen, 22 bills because he was so unhappy he was not getting that flat tax proposal. And yet it's really his own fault for pushing that proposal when he didn't have the support for it. And of those 22 bills, just so that you all know about it, there's actually some bills that I celebrate the fact that they've been killed, but there's also some good bills in there that really, should have been enacted into law. It's really a disservice to all of us that we're seeing this kind of temper tantrum by our chief executive.
We have a question from Lee Oler, a member of our board. Go ahead, Lee.
Hi, Larry. This is my friend Pine Top. Larry's going to ask the question.
What are your views? It's not as important down here. What are your views on fracking?
I'm not a fan of fracking. I'll be quite honest. I think there's a lot of other alternatives can be looking at. That's why I really think, clean energy is a really wonderful opportunity for us here in Arizona. And really, the solar resources are unparalleled and largely unexploited still, as well as wind resources. So that is the direction that I would rather we go in. And that seems to be consistent with our current presidential administration, which makes it a bit easier. We just have to make sure that Arizona is front and center in their sights is, to the extent that as a nation, we're going to invest in clean energy. It should be in Arizona. Let's take advantage of it. Let's get those jobs. Let's make sure that we transition people out of, fossil fuel related jobs, including fracking, and put them into clean energy.
Okay, we have a question from Dee Maitland. Dee, go right ahead.
Hi, Kirsten. I'm hoping with redistricting, I'll be in your district. So I'm following them carefully and working on my maps. The woman who talked about the fetuses, it was SCR 1009. And I don't understand the bill itself because it passed but went to the Secretary of State. So maybe you can explain what that kind of bill is. There's about 4 of them that passed and then didn't go to the governor, went to the Secretary of State.
Well, if there is a change to the state constitution, that only needs to be passed by the House and the Senate, and it goes directly to the voters. It doesn't go to the executive. So I think that that's what that must be. And I'd be happy to look it up and refresh my memory on this. Obviously, I'm not recalling exactly what the language of this is, but that would have been a Senate concurrent resolution if it's called an SCR.
Yeah, it's looking like it's asking the Center of Disease Control to start keeping a record of born alive infants from an attempted abortion and to provide them with medical care.
Okay, that to me is really perpetuating the view that there are a lot of born alive fetuses in abortion care, which is not accurate.
Okay. So it's just going to, the Arizona legislature is just then going to be telling the Center of Disease Control that I've looked at the vote count, it's 31 to 29 and 16 to 14.
So this is not, you're right. This is not something that's actually going to the voters. It's not changing the Constitution.
Okay.
It's actually, like, we call them postcards. They are actually just statements that go to our congressional delegation, or it sounds like in this situation, going to our Secretary of State.
Okay.
Go back to Andrea Kennedy. because it sounds like she brought this up first. And thank you for her.
It's
Andrea,
Senate
did you
Bill.
want to add something to that?
Yes, thank you. It's Senate Bill 1457, and it forbids abortion on the basis of genetic defect, and also forbids the mailing of abortion-inducing medication. And Ducey signed it in April, and I wondered, will there be any challenges to this, or are there any challenges? Thank you.
No, I absolutely know a lot about 1457. Absolutely. I was a real fighter on that in the Arizona Senate, and I was also on the conference committee on that, fighting against that bill. So 1457. So 1457 is a bill that does put into our law the idea of personhood of a embryo, use it with 8 federal constitutional rights of a person, which is kind of mind-boggling in terms of what impacts that would have. And it also criminalizes the performance of an abortion of a fetus with a genetic abnormality where the doctor understands that the abortion is being sought because of that genetic abnormality. And as you said, it does other things in terms of restricting abortion by university-related hospitals, as well as abortion medication prescriptions through the mail. This is a very large and significant burden upon a person's right to choose. And I do expect that there will be, I think it's maybe already filed actually, or very soon, there will be challenges to this in the Supreme Court. We are probably seeing this end up in the Supreme Court. There have been other states that have enacted things that are similar, but it does seem to be really designed, not almost, it's designed to challenge Roe versus Wade.
Thank you very much. We have a question from Jeannie Christie, also a member of our board. Go ahead, Jeannie.
Kirsten, it's good to see you. Thank you for coming today. Getting back to the dreaded fraud, I was wondering if you could give us an indication if there are any Senate Republicans giving President Karen a hard time about maybe retracting that fraud.
I have seen some indications on Twitter that a few of our Senate Republicans are not big fans of what's going on, especially Paul Boyer in, I believe, District 20. So she doesn't have necessarily everybody behind her, but she has enough of them. So she's been given a lot of free rein, her and Warren Peterson, Senator Peterson, who unfortunately has also been the chairman of the Judiciary Committee. She hasn't really been stopped by the legislature. And party lines, they actually voted at one point to hold in contempt the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors. It's a Republican-held board for not releasing information to the auditing group that has no experience and is a biased group. So yes, but it hasn't seemed to stop it. So once again, making sure that we have legal rights and legal rights to challenge actions in the courts is very important. That I think is really going to be the only remedy. Is there's lawsuits that are now being filed on behalf of voters in Maricopa County against the recounting of the ballots, especially because they're looking at the raw voted ballots, some of which have private information written and scribbled on them. And so this is seen as raising constitutional issues of the privacy of and anonymity of voting. So it really is very, very serious, but unfortunately, it seems like it's going to be something that's going to be resolved in the courts, and we're not going to be able to rely on our Senate Republican colleagues to stop, which is unfortunate.
We have time for one more question, and I would like to claim it. There's 2 cases in the U.S. Supreme Court regarding voting rights in Arizona. They're both brought by Attorney General Brnovich and the Arizona Republican Party, and they concern invalidating votes that were voted out of precinct, and also the whole idea of ballot collection to help rural and disabled voters. How do you think the court's going to rule on that, Kirsten?
I don't know that I have an answer on that necessarily. It is very concerning. It's very concerning to have Brnovich representing the state of Arizona when he has shown himself to be a very partisan political actor. And I think something I'd like to point out about the Republican budget is that there's a provision in there that makes Brnovich the sole and exclusive person to deal with all challenges to voting and election laws in the state of Arizona. He has full control over election law and takes it away from Katie Hobbs and our Secretary of State. And to make it full circle back to the congressional race, this is why we need HR 1. We need HR 1. We need Congress to be able to step in and guarantee our voting rights. Because as you can see, what's happening in the states is we have these partisan political actors who are not representing the interests of the people, but instead are perpetuating really these ideologically based attacks on our voting rights.
Kirsten, I want to thank you so much for being so open and informative. Lots of kudos to you in the chat. We're unfortunately out of time. So if people want to ask you questions, what is the best way to contact you? And for those who would like to support your election, where can they go to find out more information?
Thought you'd never ask. Engelforarizona.com. That is the congressional website. Does have a link for donations. Always welcome. More information about me. The Gmail account that is attached to that is engelforarizona@gmail.com. That will go into a place where I will be sure to get it. And so I welcome your questions and your comments. Thank you so much. And I really hope people can make it to the June 10th at 6 p.m. kickoff at Hotel Congress.
Sounds great. Thank you so much. And I want to thank everybody for attending on this blue sky, sunny Tucson Memorial Day. And with that, we're going to call the meeting to an end. Have a great week. And best of luck to you, Kirsten. Thank you.
Thank you very much, all of you.
Bye-bye now.